4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio. Live from the heart of the downtown east side, it's Talk Recovery Radio with Giuseppe Ganci and Darren Gaylor on Vancouver's Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. From the streets to the studio, bringing you addiction recovery stories from real people with lived experience and real experts on today's issues. Tune in live every Thursday, noon to 1. Powered by New West Recovery. Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio.
And there you have it. Hello, welcome to Talk Recovery Radio, everyone. My name is Giuseppe Ganci, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Darren Gaylor. Hey, Darren.
How are you, Giuseppe?
I am doing good. Real people, real issues, real lives. That's the story that we try to bring to everybody every Thursday here. 7 years, 7 seasons, hundreds of guests, thousands of listeners, and real issues. Like today on my Facebook wall I shared, on Talk Recovery's Facebook wall I shared, you know, there's these two 17-year-old girls that not need. They also want abstinence supported bed-based services, and they want to go to treatment, and they want to go to a gender specific program for girls. And sadly, there's no like, this is like, I don't think people get it. There's no funding for these girls to go to treatment. There's a few sprinkled youth beds in British Columbia. They're gender specific to women. There's like a program for pregnant teen girls. The thing is, there's actually empty beds in a facility that's been around for 40 years, Westminster House, part of New West Recovery. They have this program, and the government won't fund those beds. You know what? Let's just call it what it is. It's because it's abstinence supported treatment. They won't fund it. And you know what? There was grants for youth beds a while ago, but they had to be, you know, completely, you know, harm reduction only and all that kind of stuff. So there's just so many dirty politics when it comes to addiction healthcare, and most people don't realize it until they need their 17-year-old girl to go to treatment, and it's like, okay, well, it's $7,000, and then the whole world goes upside down. Why do they have to pay? And you're greedy. It's like, well, because no one's paying for them. You know, they spend $50 million on an SRO hotel in the downtown east side, but they won't fund youth girl treatment beds. So that's how backwards this province is. Can you believe it, Darren?
I mean, and I mean, I've seen it before, and I understand the anger that's usually driven towards the treatment center themselves that are asking, you know, that amount of money. But I mean, they have to understand how much it costs to run. Like, it's a non-profit, like, you know,
non-profit charity, bed-based services, PSA for everybody in BC, bed-based addiction treatment services in the province of British Columbia are some of the lowest paid facilities in an overdose crisis. Okay. Yeah. They spent $36 million on 100 new beds. They spent $36 million on one hotel. Like, that is where the priorities are in this province. And like, if this makes you mad, you need to call up the, you know, John Horgan and let him know, like, what is going on. Like 6-7 people are dying a day. These two girls, they have no options. They need to go to a you know, another facility where they don't want to go to because there's boys there, and apparently there's a story there, and they don't want to go to a facility where there's boys. Anyway, that's our hot topic of the day. If you don't care, that's cool. If you do care, call John Horgan and say, look, like, these two girls deserve healthcare. Like, we're in an overdose crisis. Maybe you want to take a look at that. Anyway, I've lost so much hope for what's going on in BC. So we're going to talk to Minister of Mental Health and Addictions in another province, who I think, if you know what, you know, he probably didn't hear the beginning of the show. So Minister Tabolo, welcome to Talk Recovery Radio. We got a bit of a hot topic going on, but you are the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions in the province of Ontario. Welcome to our show.
Thank you, Giuseppe. It's a pleasure to be here for a second time. It was great to see you.
For a
Yes.
second time, yeah. Well, we were talking about Ontario's Recovery Month Canada, Recovery Month Ontario, sorry, and we tried to get one nationalized in Canada, but we couldn't. Your province has taken the steps with some other MPs and so forth to proclaim Recovery Month in Ontario, and I'm just wondering what's the good news on that?
Well, we are, as you know, I'm a huge supporter of you and the work that you guys are doing in BC. I know how, you live and breathe recovery and treatment as being core to, to really giving people the opportunity to get their lives back. So I took up the initiative here in the province not too long ago to do something about it and make sure that we could participate and at least show good faith on our part to be part of the movement. And just recently, Bill 250 was passed, and the reason I'm shuffling paper is because I want to show it to you. So here is the legislation. We now officially have in the province of Ontario declared an act to proclaim Recovery Month. And this, I have to say, is because of the good work that you guys are doing out there and the inspiration that you gave to me to make it a priority for our government. So within a very short period of time, I don't know when the last time I was on the air, but we talked about doing something. Well, we did. And this particular copy is signed, and you will have it for your wall, my friend. It has Doug Fort's name on it, my name. Because I'm a minister, I'm not allowed to bring forward a private member bill, but I've got the member Vincent Key to sign it, and of course our Governor General on the top. So you'll be able to display this and show it to the politicians out there. Look, you guys are asleep. Ontario got into it before we did, but that's just a little challenge to help motivate the people out there. But I have to say that the continuum of care, which is something that we've always believed in when we talk about the roadmap to wellness and the strategy that we planned, for me is it's critical to have that, the withdrawal management portion, the treatment facilities, and adapting the treatment to the needs of the individual, and not saying this is what we got, you don't like it, too bad, so sad, there's nothing else for you. We have to adapt. We have to give those opportunities to people needing help. And your inspiration is doing even more work. I'm not sure if you know this. I don't even know if I can announce it, but I'm going to anyways. I reached out to the minister in Alberta. I reached out to the minister in Manitoba, to the minister in Saskatchewan, and to the minister of PEI, who all have ministers of mental health and addiction, either ministers or associate ministers. And we thought it was a good idea to come together, one, to start talking about mental health, not just in our own provinces, but across Canada. And then you're going to be the star of the show, because you're going to come in and you are going to school all the ministers. You're going to teach us. You're going to tell us what we need to do to build a better, stronger, more cohesive system. So Giuseppe, you're an inspiration. And
No way.
Thank you for being there and helping us do this as well.
Well, I don't think I'll be schooling anyone, because I definitely, well, that's pretty interesting. Oh, I'm honored. That is great news. And I'm really thrilled about that. That is why we wanted to get you on the show again, too, because I know that we've had some conversations about Recovery Month and so forth, but so BC, we did ask for Recovery Month one time, and it got declined as well. We've had a Recovery Day proclamation, but we haven't had a Recovery Month proclamation. For those viewers that probably have watched our show in the past, we petitioned Canada, the feds, to do a Recovery Month Canada. It got voted down by all the parties except for, it got voted down by one party. Let me get that straight. The current Liberal government, and all the other parties voted yes. It was motion. Oh my goodness, so many things have gone on. We did a motion to make Recovery Month Canada an official proclamation, and the Liberal Party voted no. The Minister Patty Ajou actually said harm reduction is the mandate of the federal government. But here's the problem, and this is why I like what you're doing, is it's not just a piece of paper. We don't want a piece of paper. It's a piece of paper. But it's the idea of building momentum for recovery. We can't just tell people who use drugs to use them safely. Yeah, somewhere in the conversation, we need to talk about that. but that's all we're doing right now in Canada, when it comes to, and so your government and some of these other great ministers that you were just speaking of, the idea is how do we do recovery and how do we encourage, just like a beer commercial encourages people to drink, how do we encourage people to do recovery? And that's what you're doing. And thanks for the invitation. I look forward to seeing what that turns into. But Darren, you see it all the time here. It's just, when's the last time somebody told you, Darren, in the province of BC to even consider recovery?
I, I mean,
Any
it's,
ever?
yeah, the fact that like our government isn't doing like the most common sense approach. I mean, Minister Tabula, you just spoke like it's probably the first time the ministers of mental health and addictions from all across the province have made that decision to get into a same room, like as if it's a different problem in each individual province. This is a global, this is a human issue, and I mean, many thanks and big props to you, sir, for spearheading that movement and just starting dialogue. If that's the beginning, and the humility to invite, Giuseppe, like it's just a guy.
Just a guy.
We're just guys.
Listen, our ideas come from everyone, and we have to listen. If we were more, as a government, as governments,
Yes.
if we were more in tune with what was the reality of the street is, we would be doing a lot of things differently. I really believe that. And when we came up with the roadmap to wellness, I remember talking to some people that had lived experience, talking to some people from the LGBTQ2 community,
Right.
some people from the Black community, and they're saying to me, "You're asking us what we need. Like, why?" And I'm kind of like, "What do you mean, why? You're a citizen of this province. You have issues, and I understand the uniqueness of the different communities. Me as a white guy trying to give therapy to a Black person, I may be able to achieve it after how many months of trying to build a relationship. I don't have the experience or the knowledge of that community, like the Indigenous communities. We know they know what to do. We know the land-based healing models work. Why are we shoving down their throats therapies that were developed by our world and saying, well, this is the one size. You like it? We give you the money for it. By the way, we're also going to send you the people to do the therapy. And, months, years go by. People give up. Why? Because we just don't have our issues are different than their issues. They're issues with trauma and complex trauma, intergenerational trauma, abuse. That there are things that have happened to that community we can understand and be compassionate about. But the reality is we've not lived, we've not walked in their shoes. So we need to find ways to provide them the resources to be able to utilize our land-based healing, the Black community, to utilize strategies that underscore and understand the relevancy of culture and heritage and lived experience to the needs of their people. That's the right way to do it. And that's why when, I've listened to Giuseppe talk about recovery capital. You look at the person's strengths. Now, it's a heck of a lot harder for me to identify somebody else's strengths when he doesn't come from my community. If he came from my community, right? Like if he was Italian background, second generation, I can figure that out pretty quick. And you know what? It doesn't take long for me and, another person that has my same cultural background to build that rapport. But if I had to try to impose my views on someone, I'd find it offensive just the same way if they tried to impose their views on me. So let's cut to the chase. Let's get this right. And let's get the job done, right? So that's why I'm, such a big fan of you guys and what you're doing out there. You got it right. There's tons of support too. I mean, harm reduction is important, and I don't want people to think that I'm, I only see things through one lens. But to suggest that harm reduction is the answer to the problem is to turn a blind eye to the reality of what's happening on the street. To me, harm reduction is important, but how many airplanes do you want to stack over an airport waiting to build runways to land them before they start falling from the sky? A doctor the other day said to me, and I got to repeat it because I think Giuseppe will like this. You guys will like this as well. Doctor said to me, Minister, the problem with harm reduction is that you are telling an addict that he should get palliative care. I said, well, what do you mean by that? Well, think about it. If you had cancer and someone said to you, go see a palliative doctor, because we're going to stabilize you and keep you comfortable, and eventually we'll, maybe figure out something for treatment. Like, I would be shocked at that because we know there's so many interventions that work for cancer. Why are we putting someone on palliative care if that's the case? Well, why are we doing it for someone who has an addiction? Why are we doing it for someone that
That's
has an
brilliant.
eating
Yeah,
disorder? Right?
yeah.
When you think about it,
So well. That's brilliant. I mean, that is, somebody
Who's that
that,
doctor?
yeah. Can you that whoever that doctor is? That's he
she's
needs to
out
get
of
a
London.
billboard.
Yeah, she's out of London. I can't remember, her name's not coming to me right now, but I'm going to look it up while we're talking. She's just brilliant, and she wrote a paper. Again, because of the COVID-19, she's been communicating with the coroner here in the province. She's been sharing information of what she's seen, the repercussions of safe supply are, and I'm sure actually there was a doctor on the line as well from BC. And the common thread behind this is that, yes, we're providing safe supply, so people are not dying as a result of substances that are tainted.
Right.
But there's been a huge increase in epidermological infections, heart, severe damage to heart tissue, quadriplegia. She just went on and on and on with a list of different results from using, hydromorphine that was meant to be taken as a pill, and injecting it. The lack of supervision. You go into the pharmacy, you pick up your prescription, you take it home, and you use it when you need it. The reality is, and there have been articles that have come out in BC, we're starting to see them in Ontario as well, that people are going in, picking up their prescription, and there's camps that are set up close to the pharmacy where they go and swap out the hydromorphine for fentanyl. And I don't know what the cost is out there. I think a pill used to be 30-40 bucks a pill. It's $3 for a buck now. Like,
Yeah,
that's how
same
much
thing's
more
happening here.
supply,
Yeah,
you know.
same thing's happening here.
But
But no one's that never makes the evidence that supports, the evidence-based world. Uh, Things get convoluted here where it's like people's free will to do drugs and addiction, and the palliative care piece that we're talking about, for those of you that are listening, it's like when somebody has an addiction and wants help. It's complete. Like here in BC, just today on the front page of the news, that's what Darren and I were talking about earlier today. There's these two 17-year-old girls, and they want to go to an abstinence supported treatment center, and there's they don't want to go to a treatment center that's government funded where there's boys because of whatever reasons. They want to, and there's a treatment center, the sister program of our program, that's got some funded bed for girls, but they're all private because the government won't fund them. They've been around for 40 years. So they want to go to this program. Government said, nope, can't go. And so, but if these two girls want safe supply, Suboxone, methadone, or needles, it's like easier to get that than a latte in British Columbia because you need money for a latte. But because they want to go to a specific treatment center, they can't go. And until we get that sorted out, we will never get out of this overdose crisis because literally those girls aren't going to treatment today. If I broke my arm in the province of Ontario, I wouldn't have to wait. But for this, I do. And no one's dying from broken arms. People are dying from fentanyl. And these girls are probably going to use fentanyl, today. And that's just the way it is. And their parents can't afford private treatment. So I also want to just back up a second, because now that I've kind of listened to the whole interview play back into my head, so I'm talking to a bunch of ministers. And that just hit me, actually. I was like, what is going on here? I've never really been invited to talk anywhere. I've forced myself into rooms before, but never get listened to, that's for sure. I'm the crazy, recovery gnome guy, you know what I mean? That just like I'm just that guy over there. So that's pretty cool, eh, Darren?
It's amazing. I'm
Yeah.
so glad to hear. Like that our government, it seems like you have to burst or break into a room,
Yeah.
that there's already the main speaker who's part of the agenda already, and there's these millions of voices that like Minister Tabolo mentioned, like that came from the street, and have nothing but an experience of what worked and what didn't work, and that all needs to be heard. And like, who better to hear this information than our ministers of mental health and addictions? So
Yeah.
Well, I believe the time has come for us to have those discussions. You guys know I ran a center for addiction here in Toronto, and I saw it over and over again how when you started talking about treatment or recovery, there was a very, very slow uptake by the previous government. I've spoken to two premiers, two ministers of health, and they all would say the same thing: you're a really nice guy, but you don't get it. And I'm thinking, like, but do any of you know what's going on the street? Like, have any of you looked beyond what you're being told? And again, who are you being told by? I believe that hospitals and psychiatric hospitals in the continuum of care are important for the 5% who need those types of treatments. But how about the rest of the continuum of care? How is it? And that's the part that I don't know how it is out there, but how is it that in the province of Ontario, there's over 600 grassroots organizations that grew organically? Things do not grow organically unless there's a gap or a void that is not being looked after by someone. And the someone in this case has been previous governments. Governments have not invested in building that continuum of care. And we've heard it over and over and over and over again. I sound like a broken record. And I came to government exactly for this reason. I'm tired of talking about it and not doing anything about it. So you know what? It's time for us to lock arms, not just here in the province of Ontario, but across Canada, and do what we know has to be done, because everybody deserves a second chance. And I haven't met a person yet who has an addiction who hasn't cried out for help, and in most cases been disappointed because there was no one there to pick him up or her up and give him that chance. And we lose amazing people. We lose amazing people every single day. I've met some of the most artistic, some of the smartest guys. Again, I've always worked with men, so I can't really talk about women, but I'm sure we're losing beautiful, beautiful women as well as a result of this. But the guys that I've met, that I've lost, that they had the world by the tail.
Yeah.
It's just they couldn't pull themselves into that place because the supports were very hard to come by. And we weren't doing enough to figure out how to motivate people and put them in the right channel for support, because there's just one size. I ran an addiction center that runs for 24 months. Not too many people want to spend 24 months of their lives. But we know, and my research has shown me, because I went through my doctorate, my research has shown me that you don't need to spend 24 months in a recovery treatment center. You can spend less time. But then the question comes, what wraparound services are available to you as an individual after you finish that treatment? So the treatment could be 30 days, but if you don't have supports there, whether it be supportive housing, job, education, whatever the other social determinants of health are, unless you're addressing those other issues, that person will fail. And that's what we're set up to do, is to continue people to fail. So we've got to look at this differently. We've got to look at it from the lived experience and bring that forward as a way to inform us on how to build a system that's going to make a difference in a person's life. And the beauty of this is people say, you're a bleeding heart, social. You know what? This isn't about being a conservative or being about a liberal. It's about giving an individual a chance at life. And let's face it, the chances, the difficulties that our young people are facing today are much more complex than they ever were. And as a result of that, to fall back on a substance, to perhaps to use to try to regulate or to try to self medicate one because of the difficulties, we're not doing enough to teach the kids the resiliency that they need. So we need to invest more in that. We need to do more. But the reality is that everybody deserves that chance, and it's not the person's fault. To be stigmatized for having an addiction is wrong. It's wrong. And what we need to do is we need to let those people be empowered through the system, and not despite the system, by having to use not-for-profit organizations and expensive treatment. We need to find ways of empowering individuals, because then they become family men or family women again. They bring an experience that's going to make their kids a hell of a lot smarter than any of us because of their lived experience. They're going to go to work and they're going to pay taxes. They're going to buy a house and pay a mortgage. They're going to go to the grocery store and spend their money on food and on other things that they need, commodities that are necessary for life. And you know what? They're going to have a beautiful life. And we're all going to be better off because they're going to be contributing to the system, not taking away. So I'm all in when it comes to talking about recovery, not only talking about it, but doing something about it. And I have to say how grateful I am to have a premier like Doug Ford and the other premiers that are all as well very engaged and interested. And that's why they're allowing these meetings to take place, for us to come together and to inform ourselves so that we can build and have a united voice against, a federal government that has a very different focus on, I just like the fact that we're letting people walk around like zombies and not giving them the opportunity. Those planes are going to come down one day, and who's going to be there to pick up the pieces? I mean, I will always be there, and I know you guys will, but it's not going to be enough. So now's the time. We got to strike now. We got to make things happen now.
Yeah, especially as we get out of this pandemic, and now we're going to start realizing we've been in a pandemic for a long time, and it's not an overdose pandemic; it's an addiction pandemic. Like there's something going on in Canada where, the idea of using crack, fentanyl, and heroin and all these other drugs has exploded in this country, and what are we doing? And I hope that our work with Recovery Day, Recovery Month, and all that kind of stuff, the Recovery Capital Conference, all that kind of stuff, we're just this little tiny engine trying to go up this really steep hill in New Westminster, BC, and like I'm grateful that we've connected somehow, and we're able to chat. Thank you for this invitation. I think that's awesome. I'm gonna have to talk to some people after this show, be like, okay, now what? I really want to point out, like we've sent a lot of invitations to a lot of other people and government, and they don't want to talk to us. Like they don't want to talk to us. So I didn't even ask for this, so this is kind of pretty cool. It just shows the difference. So I really appreciate that, and ultimately, this is not just going to save lives, it's going to save communities. It's a recovery oriented system of care. So thanks for believing in it, and congratulations on getting Recovery Month Ontario passed. Alberta has a Recovery Month as well, and hopefully this trickles through all the other provinces as well. We'll try to get a Recovery Month in BC. They said no last time, a couple of years ago, and we'll see what happens this time. And I will look forward to hopefully seeing you and hopefully attend a Recovery Day in Toronto.
Yes, well, we're looking forward, and we are planning for that. Giuseppe, make sure you ask for that of the 5 ministers when you got them on the line, and you can shame them into saying Ontario jumped on this immediately. And
Okay, yeah, well, look, I'll take some talking notes. Okay,
they'll be good. They'll be good. We're all on the same page with that. And I just want to say, I keep on saying it every time I see that poster behind you. Amazing work in bringing them together. But every time I see that poster, I keep on saying, and we could just put up in the top little corner, Italy 3, Switzerland 0.
Yeah. There you go. We can do that too.
it looks like St. Clair after the World Cup back in the 70s. But anyways, you guys are doing amazing work. God bless you for continuing the fight, the good fight. Stay strong. Know that you've got allies in other parts of the country, and we will be there. We will do great things because this is the right thing to be doing. We're not doing this for any other reason than to do it for the right reason. So we will be heard, my friend. We will be heard.
You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio, Vancouver Co-op Radio 100.5 FM, and you're listening to us also on Facebook Live. Because of COVID, we're not in the studio, We just finished talking to Minister Michael Tobolo for Minister of Mental Health and Addictions in Ontario and celebrating the official proclamation of Recovery Month Ontario. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. Thanks for being on our show, and thank you for the invitation. I'll let our viewers and listeners know how that goes when it happens, and we'll keep everybody posted. Thank you so much. You have yourself a great day.
You too. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Awesome. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, everybody, that was our first half of the show. Thanks for listening. And now we're going to move on to our second guest. Don't forget, we come to you every Thursday, noon to 1, Vancouver Co-op Radio. Myself, Mr. Giuseppe Ganci. I don't know why I said Mr. And Mr. Darren Gaylor, bringing it to you Talk Recovery Radio every Thursday. And thank you to Co-op Radio for giving us some time. And don't forget, Talk Recovery Radio is powered by New West Recovery, Canada's recovery community. And Mr. Gaylor, who are we listening to today on the second half of the show?
Yeah, we get to talk recovery with a leading healer, holistic health consultant, an author. We're going to talk about his Amazon bestseller, Convergence Healing Pain with Energetic Love. Welcome to the show, Peter Bedard.
Wow, I love the introduction. Thank you. Good to see you guys. I was actually listening in on Facebook, so I was able to hear part of it, but I didn't want to have it playing at the same time. You know, something that the Reverend said really stuck out to me. And he said, people deserve a second chance. And I'm going to say they deserve a third, fourth, and fifth chance.
I got 13 chances.
Yeah, part of recovery is to fall off the wagon.
Yeah,
I've met very few people who have tried to do sobriety and succeeded the first time. We need to understand that it's a relearning of life. Recovery is a relearning of how to be in the world, how to have it. Maybe for some people it's a learning. It's not a relearning.
It's
understanding
a massive change of personal beliefs, values, habits. You know, just the day-to-day routine, thinking. I mean, a lot goes into it. You know, I mean, in my own experience, not just to stop, you know, causing the damage, but, you know, to lead a different life where like it would be crazy to use drugs at this point. I don't need that to celebrate my life, you know, and it is a difficult process. And part of that process is also, you know, life brings about pain, be it chronic, emotional, physical. And, you know, from what I understand, convergence healing is essentially healing pain without medication or without the westernized approach. So this is a huge topic because it's going to have a lot of skeptics, right? Like, you know, there's no way. Like anybody that's currently using pain right now with medication or experiencing pain with using medication are going to be non-believers that they could do it without medication. I know that that's going to be one part of the thinking. The other part is, how many doctors do we see that will say you're crazy if you don't follow this prescription of pain relief medication? So you have professionals that would say you'd be crazy not to. But then we have this approach, this idea that, yeah, Western civilized medication is a big part of the problem in and of itself, period. So let's talk about this. Let's discuss. I mean, how did you get into this idea? What was your experience? There was a near-death experience, or you actually did die. You didn't come close, you actually died. So was that circumstance the experience you had going through it without medication? Or tell us about that.
So there's so much. Oh my God. I just with those statements you made there, I could talk for hours. Yeah. Okay. I have to go back. So part of what you said is accurate, but part of it's not, in the sense that my work isn't against Western medicine. It is an alternative, but it's also an integration. Beautiful. So what I learned is that pain is pain is pain, that The brain doesn't understand pain differently when it's physical, mental, or spiritual. The
Right.
brain understands pain. And
Same
it doesn't say
synapses.
right. Our
Yep.
brains would have to be so large if we said, oh, well, this is one type of pain, and this is another type of pain, and this is another type of pain. We have a pain response, and our brain understands it. And our brain wants to say, I don't want that response anymore. What am I going to do about it? Right.
Right.
Now, the way I work is about connecting with the part that's struggling, understanding if it's a physical primary, a mental primary, or an emotional primary. And understanding that all pain has all those elements to it. You know, when I work with one of my professional football players and they come to me most of the time because they have a busted up knee or a broken back or something like that, right? They come in because there's a physical obvious pain,
Right.
and the doctors are helping them with that pain. But nobody's talking about the pain in their head, that anguish, that panic that's in their head of what am I going to do? Am I ever going to be able to play again? What's going to happen with my contract? What's going to happen with the team, with my season, with my place on the team, the $15 million house I just bought, which would be fine because I have a $50 million contract. But if I don't have that contract anymore, how am I going to pay for that house? So that panic that's in the brain.
And there's a different healing process from that to the physical itself, right?
Exactly.
Even though it's the same in the brain, there's a different process that's required.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yes. And that heart pain, because these guys have played ball generally since they were like 10 years old, 8 years old. It's what they know. Yeah. It's how they understand the world. It's how they communicate with the world. It's who they are. It's how they know how to be. And their hearts are breaking because they don't know if they're ever going to be able to do this thing that they love more than anything ever again.
Right.
And so even if the body heals, but the brain is saying, I can't do that. If the brain is saying, I'm scared of doing that, or I only perceive myself now as broken, then they're going to constantly go back to that as a reality. So part of it is coming to the pain, understanding the pain, letting the pain, instead of being this big, giant, massive overwhelm, letting the pain take on a shape and a form. So I ask people to let their pain become a physical thing that they can see, even if it's just them in their mind's eye. Because if not, then it just becomes this thing that shuts down the brain. It becomes this overwhelm. I don't know how to deal with it, so I might as well go and use or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I ask people to give the pain a shape and a form. Oh, Bob the cloud, the emptiness, that empty nothingness, that black expanse. I think it's like a thunderbolt, right? That stabbing pain. Oh, I can see it now. I can see it. I know how I talk to it. I feel its presence. So instead of having it be this overwhelming thing, which it may still feel these qualities of being overwhelming, my brain has a way to connect with it. So then I go to that part and I start asking it what it needs. And that may sound crazy. My cancer clients taught me that, right? They taught me that these tumors are real things and these tumors need to be loved. How crazy that sounds. But the funny thing is that people who don't have cancer, it sounds weird, but to my cancer clients, they're like, oh yeah, I totally get it. This part of me is suffering. And they understand that, wow, there's a part that's suffering, whether it's a trauma, an abuse, or a tumor. And that part actually needs love more than anything. But what we normally give it is abuse. We talk to these parts of us and we say, I don't want to say it to you guys. We say, I hate you. I can't stand you. I'm embarrassed of you. We talk to our addiction like that. I'm frustrated with you. I wish you'd just go away. I want to cut you out. I want to throw you away. I want to drug you to oblivion. I don't want to ever see you again. And when we say, I'm willing to give you that love that you need, because you're obviously suffering, and we actually start loving this part of us that's suffering, the miracles start to happen. Now, I'm not against medications. I'm against using medication as a first defense.
Okay.
So sometimes people need that. Sometimes we need to take
it. Yeah.
shots.
So right? there's the healing of the body. Say there's an incision, there's a post-surgery, right. The body needs to be still. And I couldn't imagine. I mean, I had surgery on my foot once. It was excruciatingly painful. And after still being under anesthesia, I didn't feel pain. I didn't take the medication when I should have, when the anesthesia ran off, and my body was convulsing. It was shaking so hard, and because I wasn't applying the medication to the body needing to rest and
The body went into shock.
It did.
And shock is not a healthy state to be.
Exactly. Right? So the point is once that medication goes in, it takes care of everything going on.
That's part of the problem too.
The worry, like you say, the anxiety of when I'm going to get better, when I'm going to go get back to work. So not a lot of people differentiate, and then when they start or they come off the medication, that's all heightened. The anxiety, the concern, the fear. I mean, yeah, but you know, I got this incision healing on my foot, so that gives me the excuse to continue more.
Exactly. I like to do that on the nose. Right? So what we are normally
the guy that comes in there and says, hold on, like let's look at what's going on emotionally, mentally, you know, and do a process of therapy and whatnot, you know, right. Like so that you're not just dependent and thinking that you require more medication.
Exactly. You know, in the addiction world, there's a lot of anxiety and depression issues. Yeah. And I'm not against taking the medications to help us do that. There's lots of different ways that people are depressed. Right. If you're having and you're struggling with an addiction, there's a likely you're depressed, and that would be normal. But our culture says that's bad and that's wrong and you shouldn't be depressed. Or we say, I don't want to be depressed. Well, depression isn't necessarily a bad thing if it's chronic. If it's chemically based, and a lot of times when we're in addiction, it is because our chemistry has been completely thrown off.
Right.
If it helps us balance that, but there's other things to do that can balance it, right? There's other things we could reach for that are, instead of medicating, it sucks because we may feel that depression and we don't want to feel it, but by feeling it and being present with it, it actually heals and goes away.
You know,
if we don't allow ourselves to go through the process of the healing, it's just going to hang on forever. You were going to say something.
So believe into that. You know, there's a treatment center on the other side of this shared screen here, and you know that's one of the, we work with a lot of young people, and you know there've been walk-in clinics and you know docs that aren't specialty in addictions. They did that circuit, then they come here. I mean, we have clients on medications here, but you know there are those occasions where like you just tanked your life, your girlfriend just left you, you're like 4 days clean and you're in rehab. Like you're supposed to be upset and depressed. Like exactly. let's not jump on antidepressants so quick. And you know, and then moms will call and they'll be like, oh yeah, you know, and it's just like, no, just you know, go have some fun a little bit. Even in a COVID world, you can do some fun stuff, and and it works. And then if you're still depressed, then you know maybe medication is the pathway that you need, but just give yourself a shot. And I tell you, the guys that do that, you know, which is unique, it's not common, this most places just pump you with as many pills as you want. They're like, thanks, like I needed that, like I didn't think I'd get through that. And it's like, yeah, that's what it's about, believing in the human spirit. Like you have one. I went to a pain management conference once, and so I wanted to know what you think about this conversation where pain, like Darren was saying, like medication for that foot surgery, like you need that, like you need pain medication because like you get your foot cut open. But the idea of long-term pain management using medications is actually bad for you because your body changes and it really doesn't do anything for the pain anymore, and you need more because your pain goes up, and like your body is really tricky, and people aren't told that when they're just walking to the doctor's office, they get another refill for 30 days of pills, and there's people doing this for years. How do we figure this out? How do you, because there are some people that need pain meds, like where are you at in that conversation, and how do we know what's pain medication dependent, what's, you know, like how do you walk someone through that?
How do we know what pains are actually motivated by emotional and mental states? So I've never met somebody who's struggling with addiction issues. And I don't care if it's a gambling addiction or a heroin addiction or a sex addiction. I've never met anybody who has had an addiction issue who didn't have a trauma.
Yeah.
And the addiction is driven by the trauma. And we need to address the traumas, the abuse that was done in our childhood, the post-traumatic disorder that we have, the anxiety that we grew up on, the insecure attachments that we have in the world. We have to address those issues. And I tell you, I've been doing this for 17 years and I've worked with Stanford University. I've taught all over the world. I've done all this stuff. And I've seen frozen shoulders disappear. Literally, someone who has a frozen shoulder, can't move their arm, can't move their shoulder, hasn't been able to move their arm for 5 years. I have it on tape. I was doing a talk in Istanbul, and this woman was telling me about her frozen shoulder through an interpreter. So what she was saying, what I was saying was through an interpreter. And I took her through a process of actually listening to her pain, about actually understanding what purpose it's serving and where it came from. And as she's talking, suddenly her arm starts moving like this. And her eyes are closed, and I have her in a bit of a meditative type of trance type of thing. And I ask her to open her arms, and she's looking at her arm like, what the hell? Right?
Okay.
Right?
So you wrote a book, Convergence Healing Pain with Energetic Love.
Yes.
You're listening to us on Talk Recovery Radio, by the way, for those of you that just tuned in. So is the book a memoir? Is the book teaching people how to do this? What's in the book, and what's someone expecting to read when they read this book?
So it's D, all of the above. All right. So
Okay. All right.
My story is that I was slammed into the back of a semi truck. Somebody literally came up behind me on my bike and killed me. They pushed my bike into the back of a parked semi truck. I died, went to the other side. I shattered my knee. I cracked 5 vertebrae, split my wrist open. I had undiagnosed brain damage. I had fibromyalgia, arthritis, asthma, bronchitis, sciatica. I had to learn how to walk again. I had chronic pain for decades. I had all kinds of white blood cells attacking red blood cells, hemoglobin splitting, shutting down my organs, blah, 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 all that type of stuff. The doctors had no idea what to do with me after they put my knee back together. They were phenomenal about putting my knee back together. They had 14 surgeons from the NFL come in and literally put my knee back together because my kneecap was in place, was completely intact, but the back of my leg and the parts of the bone going into the knee were completely blown to bits, right? So this is kind of a rare injury because it's a knee injury from the back, which is a common injury in the NFL, but no place else, right? These guys get tackled the knee from the back while they're running and the knee blows out. Yeah. So I was kind of the guinea pig in that situation. I look at myself as an example. If I can do this, so can you.
Right.
I lost my purpose in life. I lost how I knew how to be. I wasn't a football player, but I was one of those people that was discovered at a relatively early age. And I was a dancer. I was a protege. Just like there's football player bodies, there's basketball player bodies. Well, there's dancer bodies. I was discovered as that. And I was put into classes, and I was TA, an assistant teacher, within a year. Right? It was my natural thing. I was born to do that physically in my body. Then my body was shattered. And like these guys on the field, I didn't know who I was anymore. Right? I had to heal myself of all these things. The doctors kept offering more drugs and more surgery, whether they were drugs for my mental state, whether they were drugs for my physical state. They just kept adding up more and more drugs, more and more surgeries. I just decided I didn't want to do them because they were not helping. And I was just getting more and more surgeries, and all it was in pain. Nothing was healing. My leg got back together, sort of, but I had to look at the emotional side to it. I had to look at the spiritual side. I had to look at that broken heart. I had to look at the traumas, because trauma I look at as water flowing down a mountain. Once trauma happens in your life, it's going to flow into the path of least resistance. That upset, that hurt, that abandonment, that shame, whatever it is going to flow into the weakest point of your body, right? So it was stored in my back. And whenever that trauma was activated, my knee would hurt. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't walk. Whenever that mental, spiritual trauma was activated, right? My body, because I wasn't dealing with it mentally, I wasn't dealing with it emotionally. So my body had to deal with it. And that's the body is the slowest process for healing. So go ahead.
Just like this is a very typical story. How did your addiction begin? I got into an accident.
Exactly.
And they're dealing with everything with that medication, and the doctor, what's your pain scale? 10, right? Because their lifestyle, their livelihood, their confidence, esteem, their hope for their future isn't improving. It's in fact getting worse, making that pain, and they're probably telling the truth. Mm-hmm. Seem like it's and then the tolerance that the medication's not working as much anymore. Yeah. Now, I want to get in here. You're based out of Los Angeles, correct?
Yes.
And you mentioned working with professional athletes, who have their trainers are willing to try anything and do anything. They're obviously of the mindset, let's get this guy back in tip-top shape ASAP. So they're not just going to medicate. Is there a belief system in the professional athlete world that the complete reduction of pain is silly? Like, it's just ridiculous to think that that's going to be like that. Their athletes need to feel a sense of pain constantly in order to improve. Like, that pain is the teacher, that we can't mask it with medication, that's where we can do the work.
That's a lot of questions. So in the world in general, I think people are all about masking their pain, not feeling their pain. It's a Western way of looking at life. Pain is bad and I need not to feel it.
Right.
And I'm going to do anything I can to avoid it. Someone asked me once, they said, well, are you pain free? And I was kind of like, well, I'm still alive. So what do you mean? Because life hurts.
Yeah.
But we have this idea that I shouldn't hurt, I shouldn't be in pain. And that thinking is so bizarre if you really look at the world. Every addict says, well, I don't want to be in pain anymore. And I get it. I don't want to be in pain anymore either. But it's completely irresponsible even and unrealistic to think you're never going to be in pain again. You're going to stub your toe. You're going to have a bad relationship.
Yeah.
Something's going to get messed up. Right? That's part of life.
Yeah.
And what we didn't learn is, and what everybody, it seems, didn't learn is that that's a truth. How do I deal with pain? We weren't taught how to deal with pain, how to sit with it, how to listen to it. You said something that was part of my inspiration for my own healing. And you didn't exactly say how I hear it, but there's a several hundred-year-old philosopher named Rumi. I love Rumi. Rumi says the cure for the pain is in the pain. So that means that if I'm actually going to learn, I'm going to move beyond the pain, then I got to go into it.
Right.
I got to go to the pain. I can't medicate it all the time. There might be a time where it's so high that I can't function anymore. So yes, I need to have something to lean into.
If I can just, insert here, step 1, step 4, step 5,
Exactly.
step 6, step 7, step 9. You know what? Like, why do I got to write all this out? And
Right.
then you write it all out like it's some kind of trophy. Look how bad I am. I remember, being proud of, my step 4, look how bad I am. I'll never heal. And then it's just like you have this moment where you're like, oh my goodness.
Part of recovery, as I see it, recovery to me doesn't mean that I'm not using anymore. That's a given. That to me, that doesn't mean you're in recovery.
Right.
For me, and with my clients, I hold a higher bar. Recovery means that I am in joy and I am no longer defined by my addiction or by my pain or my accident or my being killed by somebody. I'm no longer defined by those experiences. That is what I say is recovery. And that's why I say, yeah, okay, you're not sober for now. And you fell off the wagon again, and you fell off the wagon again, and you fell off the wagon again. Great. Now you have some recovery and you're not drinking right now. But that's still, all the stuff is still there. Have you reinvented your life? Have you retrained your brain? Has your heart found joy? That joy is deep inside every single one of us. Joy isn't something you look for. Joy is something that is inside of you. Happiness is conditional. Happiness is outside of us. Are you living in joy? And if you're living in joy, is there a need to go medicate yourself? If you're living in joy, is that trauma present anymore? And so let's actually focus on living in joy. And one of my problems with, I love 12-step programs. I love CODA. I love Al-Anon. I love AA. I love all those programs. I've been in them. They're fantastic. But as I understand the brain more and more, I'm not going to keep saying, my name is Joe, I'm alcoholic. Because I'm still defining myself by that issue. I don't think it's bad. And if that's your level of recovery, phenomenal. But I use this example to talk to my clients. This is the brain and this is the mind. This is consciousness. When we are in our addiction, they're like this. There's no space. There's no separation. I am my addiction. I only understand myself by that pain. I am defined by it. When we begin to move into consciousness, there's some space. Our brains are going to do what they do. You know, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I've worked with some, and they taught me something called brain space. And that brain space is whatever your brain does really well, it's going to learn and do and require of you more and more. So on the basic level, if you're really good at worrying, your brain as an organ, as an object, is going to worry even more. You're really good at it. Your brain's going to say, let's keep doing it. I can do that. I want to do more of it. Even if your consciousness is saying, no, I don't want to do that.
Got it.
So when we are enmeshed in that experience, then we don't understand it. It's what we have to do. I have to use it's who I am. It's how I know how to exist in the world. When we start creating space between the organ of the brain, the habituated behaviors of the brain, and our consciousness, in doing that, we have the ability to create to perceive, to be, to live, to breathe differently. And so I ask people to focus on joy because in my understanding, joy is a spark of the divine. It's that thing of oneness, that's connection. I'm not talking about religion. It is that human experience that I see in babies, even babies who are sick and dying. I've seen this spark of joy, this life. It is that thing. My job as a therapist isn't to make you sober. My job as a therapist is to find that spark of joy and to bring it out of you more and more every day in every way.
Well, that is it. Then that is what all pathways to recovery should do. And we talk to so many pathways here, and we just, try to make them all available for everybody. And we're coming up to time. So your website is?
Sure. Convergencehealing.com. That's CONVERGENCE, convergencehealing.com. You can find me on Facebook. I have a YouTube channel with a couple hundred videos if you guys want. I like to make the pie bigger, not be the only person, but to be a resource.
And we can't be the only person. You know what? We're all part of the system of care, and people are going to go in and out. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio. We just finished having a conversation here in regards to convergence healing, healing pain with an energetic love, which I love. Thank you very much for being on the show. And that's my phone ringing, telling me what time it is. Thank you very much for being on the show, Peter. It's been awesome. You can get the link to his website and where you can buy your book in this post feed. The link is there, and you can go to the bookstore and to the website and to those YouTube videos. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks to Minister Michael Tabolo, who was our guest in the beginning of the hour. Darren, it's always good to see you.
Love it. Great show.
Yep.
Thanks, Bedard.
Yep, and to our loyal fans, we're going on a bit of a break. I'm taking a vacation. Yay. So we'll be back in a few weeks with some live shows. We'll be on replay. Shout out to Vancouver Co-op Radio for replaying the show live on 100.5 FM. Take care, everybody, and see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.